Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg are on a charm offensive, it would seem, trying to right the ship, you might say, after a string of privacy scandals that's left Facebook in public image crisis mode. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, the CIO, Sheryl Sandberg, admitted that Facebook needs to win back trust, but she's also talked about needing to rewrite the rules of the internet.
Yeah, at the same time, founder Mark Zuckerberg wrote a 1,000-word column for the Wall Street Journal defending his company. Now, notice the audiences of these PR blitzes are rich and influential politicians and investors, not necessarily the company's billions of users. Interesting. So for tonight's Taking Stock, we're joined by Sean Dollinger, CEO of Namaste Technologies, and Scott Phillips, Chief Operating Officer at The Motley Fool. Thank you both for being with us for Taking Stock this evening. This charm offensive from Facebook, did you find any of it interesting? Are they going to be able to right this ship, no matter how hard they try, Scott? What do you think?
You know what I love about this story, and you've already mentioned it in the opening, is the PR blitz is all about the people making the rules. You know, for all the delete Facebook hashtags, for all that stuff, does anyone know anyone who actually stopped using Facebook? I saw a few people who promised they were going to and then didn't, right? And so you kind of think, okay, the users are going to use Facebook. The biggest threat to Facebook's business is not the users saying, you're not looking after my data, although we think we care about that. It's a bit like buying Australian Mail. We all say we're going to, and no one ever does. We think we care about the data stuff, but our friends are on there, our photos are on there. What's going to change when the lawmakers, particularly in Europe, who've been really striding on this sort of stuff, GDPR rules as they call their privacy legislation, these are the ones that Facebook is worried about, and rightly so, and that's why they're in Davos, that's why they're in the Wall Street Journal, trying to convince those people who would otherwise set the more draconian rules, say, hey, guys, just back off, we're looking after this, we're doing the right thing here. This is absolutely about winning over the legislators and the regulators. The public will keep using Facebook.
Yeah, it's interesting, Sean, your own business relies on regulators moving things the right, in your direction too, right?
Absolutely.
So how do you view that story?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And Facebook's Facebook, right? And like you said, even though people say they're going to stop using it, once you're in, it's what Apple's done so amazing as well, right? Their products are incredible, and people want to keep going back. But when you're a first mover in an industry and you're trying to get ahead, it's always going to be the challenges you face, and I think with Mark Zuckerberg leading that side of things and him being a genius, I think that they'll find a way to overcome and keep finding a way to succeed at what they do.
Yeah.
I think Sheryl Sandberg's comments are really important. You talk about rewriting the rules of the internet, a pretty bold, no one from PR obviously checked that statement, right? Because that sounds a bit kind of weird and like they're going to change some stuff. But what she really is saying is, guys, this is a new frontier. The internet is a new frontier, and how we use data, who uses the data, who got access to the data, they're the rules that actually do need to be written in one way or another. Facebook is just trying to, if not manage that conversation, at least be influential.
Saying, though, it's the world's fault and where the world's at for what's happened to us.
Yeah, partly. That's exactly.
As you said, being the first mover at the front of things, it's kind of also passing the buck in terms of the blame that's been put.
I may put in the wrong words in wrong people's mouths here, but it was Zuck or somebody similar who talked about privacy, the internet age being the end of privacy to some degree. That everything now is public. We're all going to be in this, privacy-less sphere where we all know everything about everyone else because of these sorts of things, and we have to get used to that. I think that's kind of on that same line of thinking of this is what the future looks like, guys. The rules need to be different because hey, we're all sharing everything. So the old privacy of when I close my door, no one can see what I'm doing. All of a sudden, everything's online. You're with your phone or your computer 24/7. That what is privacy is the question, and I think we can look at the old rules and say we want more of that. Increasingly, millennials and others are saying, "That's my life. I post on Instagram, I post on Facebook, I post on Twitter, I post on WhatsApp, Snapchat." Privacy to a different generation doesn't mean the same as our parents' generation, in particular.
And that info's out there, and to protect it, like look, even companies like Equifax that they only focus on security and they get hacked, right? Once it's out there, it's out there. And if you're using a device, if you're doing anything, I think you're taking that step forward and opening up personally.
Yeah, I thought that idea about rewriting the rules of the internet was fascinating because in many ways the Googles, the Apples, the Facebooks, these are the mums and dads of the internet, really. What they say goes, that Google can dump you off the front page if it wants to, if you break its own rules, whether they're written or not. And because the internet is totally borderless, these are the legislation writers. This is a massive deal, them talking about making rules. I think it's fascinating to hear that from Sheryl Sandberg.
Yep.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay, another story that we were fascinated by today is that Sophie Monk is the face. Sean, I should say, Sophie Monk, you're only in Australia for a short time. We will get to Sophie Monk, I swear. Sophie Monk
just look at the pictures, you get the idea, right?
Sophie Monk is the new face of controversial Chinese tech giant Huawei, the world's largest tech company. and is the centre of several international political standoffs, including Australia banning the company from rolling out its 5G here. Now, Sophie Monk is a reality TV star and former pop star. She says she's much more interested in the battery life. So
Sean, think kind of chalk and then cheese and think Sophie Monk and Huawei, right? So people kind of work on with the what? Sophie Monk and Huawei. You guys know Huawei kind of from a global sense, you know, as well, because it is a global story. What do you think of this one? She said, just like the battery life, couldn't care less about the
Is it fair? I'm going to put something out here now for Sean's benefit, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe you're particularly here, Brooke. Is she the Kim Kardashian of Australia? Do we go that far?
Something like that.
Right. So there's your benchmark. So
yeah. Look, I think that's a pretty
not known for tech savvy, but a household name and someone
funny. Really,
she's very funny and likeable. That is true. She's got a good Australian sense of humour, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Got any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, no, I heard about it obviously, and there's been a lot of noise around the industry, and you know, they're using social media to their advantage, trying, but hey, products speak for themselves, right? You could go ahead, you could push things as much as you want these days, but products, really, you know, if they're great, they'll sell. If they don't, they won't. And yeah, it's interesting.
And isn't it almost a similar story of just talking about, you know, people targeting their message to, you know, the world's powerful and the regulators, and Huawei's kind of operating on that level, but then from a consumer level, she was literally like, I like the battery life, I like phones, yeah, sure, why not? Like, it's kind of the same thing as the Facebook.
You know what I love about this? I love the fact you guys put these two stories together, because Huawei's kind of at some level is still having that regulated conversation, but also to some degree has actually kind of lost, at least for now, that war. So they've tried to do that. They've tried to say to the regulators, we're the good guys, we're not spying, leave us alone, we're fine. And in the US and Australia and other places, they've kind of gone, no, we don't necessarily believe you yet, guys. We're not prepared to let you do this. So what do? You go the chum offensive. You actually try and then use consumer power against the regulators. So you start with one. If they got through the regulators, Sophie Monk doesn't exist. She's not an ambassador for Huawei at that case, right? She's only there now because the company's trying to say to people, hey, we're really the good guys here. They're sponsoring, I think, the Canberra Raiders in the NRL, if I'm right. Yeah. Again, Canberra, seat of government, so they want to be down there. Yeah. But also, too, the Sophie Monk story is very much saying, hey, Sophie, get out there and tell the rest of Australia about these phones that the government's letting you have, or may not take away from you. So it's that charm offensive at the consumer level, just to try and fight that, almost the pincer movement, right? Fight it from both angles.
All right, well, today is also the 35th anniversary of the original Macintosh personal computer. It was unveiled at the Super Bowl, we mentioned that earlier, went on to change the world in ways that have been discussed quite widely today. But we were thinking of an Australian angle to that, and really ahead of this Australia Day weekend, there are so many amazing Aussie inventions that have also changed the world that maybe wouldn't get that global attention necessarily like the Mac computer, but a lot of them should, we reckon. Things like the ultrasound, I mean, incredible invention. Thankfully, that put an end to zapping pregnant women with multiple X-rays. We had, you know, the cochlea. The black box flight recorder is actually an Australian invention. Polymer notes, plastic notes, that's kind of gone global in many parts of the world. And of course, one of our greatest inventions, the Hills hoist.
The humble Hills hoist.
Which, again, is a very Australian thing to know about, but it goes right back to the 1940s as one great thing that we're proud of in our backyards, or have been in the past anyway. Those backyards are getting smaller, don't you reckon? A great list. Any of those tickle your fancy?
You know, like the black box, which you just mentioned, it's made our lives safer. It's expanded travel, and obviously people have sacrificed their lives on flights that have unfortunately went down, right? And I think that's an incredible invention to allow us, and as well the ultrasound machine. I think it's incredible. Just back to the computer, right? That Steve Jobs found. It's made everybody's life that much better. So you know, all these different things that have changed the world over time, and it's made it a better place. That's what I love, you know?
For sure.
Definitely.
I've got to go. You skipped over on the auto cue, Brooke. For people at home who aren't necessarily seeing what we're seeing here,
you know that.
You skipped over the words goon bag, and you're going to pretend that's not intentional. I don't necessarily believe you. The goon bag, the humble wine cask, Sean, is called the goon bag here in Australia. It is the revolution that really did change the world. I've recently read Richard Glover's book, The Land Before Avocado.
Yes.
In that book, he mentions a friend of his, a mother of a friend of his, asked the fridge electrician if you could put a hole in the side of the fridge so she could actually pull the tap from the goon bag out, so she'd have to open and close the fridge every time to get a glass of wine, which pretty much...
That's the most Australian story.
That would have been the most Australian invention had it happened, but apparently the insulation was too thick to make it work. I'm going to go with a couple. I'm going to stick nautical. The surf reel that saved a whole lot of lives. So back in the old days, the reel, the line that used to be strung out as the lifesaver went out, it used to be a Bondi lifesaver, so I've got to put in a vote for that one. They used to literally swim out with it and they'd reel them back in from the beach, so get the lifesaver and the person being rescued back in. And of course, we can't go past the thing that won us the America's Cup in 1983, the wings keel. The wings keel has got to be the invention that is the most Australian invention, if only because it let us bring the America's Cup home for the first and only time thus far. That's kind of got to be at the top of our list. Ben Lexon, of course, the inventor of the winged keel.
All right, that's some good ones. Brooke?
Well, I was just going to add to that. Unfortunately, the video I wanted to show on this show tonight, but the quality was not good enough. I was trying to source it. I saw on YouTube a backyard drinking game which involves hanging the goon bag off the heels hoist. Everyone's standing around it, and then it kind of swings, and then whoever it stops at, it's called Goon of Fortune. Somebody in my ear has just told me.
Oh, that is great.
Google Goon of Fortune,
There you go.
because apparently someone in the studio who's talking in our ears knows exactly what that is.
Only available in Australia.
The quality was not good enough, as you can imagine, from a game called Goon of Fortune. The quality was not good. But, do yourself a favour if you want to see something very Australian this weekend. There's two amazing Australian inventions right there in the one story.
That is compounding in action, right? Not just one, not just two, the two together.
Yes.
That's
I do like the X-ray. Anyone who's had the privilege of, going through seeing their baby, unborn baby, the very first time. The ultrasound machine that was X-rays. Thank goodness we don't have to do all that anymore. So I reckon that's got to be number one for me.
Fair enough. I've got a couple that I thought were really good. The spray-on skin technology that was invented in Perth, I think, which the Royal Perth Hospital in 1993, basically for burn victims, they were able to figure out a way to basically spray on something that was some sort of skin replacement in the short term. Huge invention there. Also, an interesting one, the dual flush toilet, which we kind of might skate over. That's Australian. And
dual flush dummy.
What an incredible water-saving thing. I mean, we talk about toilet inventions, whatever, but that is a big deal in Australia. It's constantly plagued by drought. And then obviously, we've got to talk about the Australian rules football. I mean,
that's true.
That's an Australian invention.
Yeah.
What an invention, Sean. I mean, really. Go for the Bombers, if you don't mind, while you're here. Yeah, we've got to talk about that one. So they were my favourites.
Until Sunday, go for the Bombers.
Go for the Bombers.
Until then.
I've got one. There you go. Very
Fantastic.
good.
Thank you so much to both of you. Enjoy the rest of your time here in town, Sean, and also Scott. Thanks so much, guys, for joining us and taking stock.